I am here to share something that still gives me chills just thinking about it. It happened a few months ago when I was camping with a couple of my friends in the remote woods near my hometown. We were all pretty excited for a weekend away from the city, just some time to unwind and enjoy the nature. Little did we know, we were about to have an experience that none of us would ever forget in our lives. We arrived at the campsite late in the afternoon. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows that made the forest look even more eerie and terrifying. After setting up our tents and starting a fire, we settled in for the night, roasting marshmallows and sharing ghost stories. I remember one of my friends, we can call him Mike, talking about skinwalkers. He told us that they are shape-shifting witches from Navajo folklore who could take the form of many animals, even other peoples. It sounded ridiculous, but there was something about the way he spoke about them made me feel uneasy. As the fire crackled and the darkness deepened, I started to feel the weight of the woods around us. The trees felt like they were closing in, watching our every movement, and every sound seemed amplified. The wind rustling and the leaf, the cracking of the twig in the distance. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was just an imagination. But around midnight, we decided to call it a night, crawled into our tents, still feeling a little on the edge. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard a strange noise coming from outside, like a low growl, almost like an animal, but not quite. Something about it felt very off. I held my breath, listening very carefully, but it was gone as quickly as it came. I still waited for some time to hear it again, but the noise didn't come back at the night. The next morning, Michael was the first to wake up. He looked pale and shaken. He told us that he had heard footsteps outside his tent in the middle of the night. Heavy footsteps, not like any animal he knew. He thought he had imagined it at first, but when he checked in the morning, he found deep and strange tracks in the mud near our campsites. We all brushed it off as just a deer or something similar, maybe even a bear. But as the day went on, things just got weirder. We went hiking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched all the time. There was this weird quietness in the air, like the animals had all gone silent all of a sudden, and the forest was eerily quiet. That evening, we decided to tell more ghost stories around the fire to scare each other even more than last night. But this time, the atmosphere was different. We could all feel it. The air was thick, and the shadows felt longer than before. Just as Michael was about to tell his stories about skinwalkers, we heard a howl, a long, chilling sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't any animal I knew. It sounded very different. Suddenly, we saw something moving in the trees just beyond the firelight. It was too tall to be a deer, but it moved like It was talking something. We all frozen in our places, our eyes glued to the darkness, and the figure moving around the bushes. That's when I realized it wasn't just the sound or the movement that scared me. It was this feeling of being hunted. After a few tense moments, whatever it was lurking beyond the bushes was disappeared into the darkness. We quickly decided to pack it up for the night and went back to our tents. That night, I barely slept, my heart racing every time I heard a noise outside, even in the distance. The next day, we woke up to find that Michael was missing. At first, we thought he might have gone for a walk or something like that. But hours passed, and there was no sign of him. We searched everywhere, calling his name, wandering around the forest like madmen. But the forest seemed to swallow our voices. Finally, as panic set in, we stumbled upon his tent. It was eerily undisturbed, but there was a single footprint outside, huge and unnatural, like a mix between a human and something animalistic. At that moment, we all realized we were in deep trouble. It was no longer just a camping trip. We felt like something was actively hunting us. A large predator hunting for its prey. We spent that day looking for Michael, but as night fell again, the atmosphere grew even heavier. We decided to return to the campsite, hoping Jake would somehow find his way back. As we sat around the fire, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed to moving closer than before. Then one of my friends, Sam, whispered that she had been seeing something at the edge of the woods. We all turned suddenly, and sure enough, there was a figure, tall and dark, just standing there, behind the tree lines and watching us. I couldn't see it clearly, but it felt wrong, like it was almost human, but not quite there. It moved with an unnatural grace, blending in with the trees. We were frozen in fear. Then, as if it knew we were watching, it let out a low growl. That sound sent us scrambling for our tents. I sipped mine and held my breath inside my tent, praying it would leave us alone. I don't know how many hours I spent there, and I could hear my friends whispering in the dark. I was too scared to sleep, so I just lay there, staring at my tent. That's when I heard it again, the footsteps, but this time they were closer, circling our campsite. Suddenly, the growl came again, and it was right outside my tent. I felt like my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for something to happen. I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I had to get out from there. I quietly unzipped my tent, peering out into the unsinking darkness. The fire was barely glowing, and I could see the outline of the trees. That's when I saw it. Two glowing eyes staring back at me from the darkness. I quickly ducked back inside, my mind racing. I need to wake my friends. But what would we do? There was no cell service, no way to call for help. But then I heard a scream. It was Sam. I bolted out of my tent, and my heart sank. She was standing there, pointing into the woods, her face pale with terror and fear. "Michael!" she shouted. "He's out there!" We all gathered around her, and she described seeing him. He was running through the trees, but something was chasing him. We couldn't see what it was, but the sound of heavy footsteps filled the air. We had to help him. We grabbed the flashlight and cautiously moved into the woods, calling his name. The darkness felt alive, the trees whispering secrets we didn't want to hear. As we walked deeper, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the feeling of being watched intensified. It was like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Then we heard it, a rustling sound just ahead. We froze in our places, the flashlight illuminating the trees in front of us. There, just beyond the light, we saw a figure. It was tall and thin, with long limbs that looked almost broken. It stood there, watching us, its face hidden in the shadows. I felt a wave of dread washing over me. Run! I yelled suddenly, and we all turned and sprinted back to the campsite, our heart racing. We reached the campsite, panting and terrified, but as we huddled together, we realized Michael was still missing. We couldn't leave him. We took a moment to catch our breath, but that's when we heard a new sound, a deep, distorted voice echoing through the trees. It was calling out to us. It sounded like Mike, but not real. It sounded more like someone mimicking Michael's voice. Help me, it said, but it didn't sound like him. It sounded very wrong, more like twisted. We looked at each other in horror, realizing what we were dealing with. It was trying to lure us in, to make us vulnerable. We had to make a choice, stay and wait for Michael, or leave before it was too late. But deep down, we knew we couldn't just abandon him. Just then, we heard a crash in the woods. It sounded like something was charging toward us. We scrambled to grab our gear, adrenaline pumping through our veins. That's when I saw it again. The figure from earlier, standing at the edge of the campsite. It was moving closer, and this time I could see its face. It was human, but not quite. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes wide and empty. It's like hollow pits. Michael, I shouted, but I knew it wasn't him, even though it looked like Michael. We ran from there, leaving everything behind, diving into the woods. The sound of footsteps echoed behind us, and we didn't stop until we reached the main road. We flagged down a passing car, our hearts racing. The driver looked terrified as we piled in, breathless and shaking at the same time. We told him everything, but honestly, I don't think he believed any word we said. We just want to get away from the place. As we drove away, I glanced back at the dark woods. I saw those glowing eyes watching us from the shadows. To this day, I still think about Michael. We reported him missing, but he was never found. The woods swallowed him. And I can shake this feeling that whatever we encountered that night is still out there, waiting. So, if you ever go camping in the woods, remember this. There are some things that don't want to be found. Hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel. Enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali Wendigo. Bye.